what I wanted to do is I run a company called CRMCS, sort of founded it in 2015 actually, it's ages ago now. And really what I've seen is like the technology landscape change dramatically over the years. And so really what I wanted to go through, I'm quite a techie guy, so I'll go through quite a lot of tech content, but in a nutshell, there's loads of buzzwords around now. They've been around for a few years, but they're particularly more relevant than they used to be, around no code, low code, and then hard code. And really what I want to do is have a bit of an exploration of that, what these terms mean, and then really what they're good at and what they're bad at. And really what my sort of big focus on, because I run a company with my team, looking at how some of our clients have used bits of low code, bits of hard code, and done different things with that. Look at practical implementations of that as much as big things that I like to waffle on about with solution architecture. And everything, obviously the cloud's a massively overused buzzword these days, but there's obviously huge implications for that world on why the cloud makes low code and hard code a bit different than it used to be. A bit about myself, because I usually lurch in these presentations, don't even introduce myself at all, which is because I'll just get straight into techie content. But my name's McQuillan. As I said, I founded CRMCS in 2015, but I've worked with the Microsoft Cloud before it was the Microsoft Cloud, specifically Dynamics and the Power Platform since it was first launched in the UK. So I've basically grown up with what is now the Microsoft Cloud. And so I know it incredibly well. Usually people in my position go, I'm not technical, but I know people. For my sins, I am very technical. I write code, I help business analyze people's applications and rollouts of the cloud. Obviously nowadays in my role, I do a lot of project management and I run a company. So I'm firmly the jack of all trades. But deep down, I've never really lost my software developer background. And so I know a huge amount, without getting too arrogant, about why hard code is useful, low code is useful, when to use one, when to use the other. And I kind of see both sides of the fence. And that's really where hopefully I can offer a bit of a unique perspective at times on these things. And so this is what really I want to go through today. I won't sort of, obviously it's quite content here, we can get the slides out to people later on, but really there's three big things I want to look at is really platforms versus systems. A lot of people build systems nowadays, that's where it's always been done in the past, but what's the difference between building a system and building a platform, and how does that affect legal innovation? And crucially for me, my big point is, ultimately, most businesses do some sort of product. Might be a professional services product, a legal product, and really, with my business owner hat on, product definition is one of the biggest bits for businesses. But ultimately, techie people like me don't tell you guys what product you're delivering. You guys deliver that product. How does technology help that? Is it a platform? Is it a system that pretends it can do everything? And then how do people use technology to build their products to get them to their customers? And like particularly in the professional services world, that's, the product used to just be some geezer who's really good at stuff. You'd sell a techie out, you'd sell a solicitor out, you'd sell a lawyer out. Really now, pretty much, most people have a human product backed up with technology. But how do we put that technology in a way that actually works? And that's really my through line. And what I want to do, because I sort of want to show practical examples, is showcase how we've done that for our clients. And so I use a bit of techie knowledge of how existing client systems that we've worked on and delivered for people to show how we've done that. And to do that, really I want to focus on, obviously, low code, pro code. I've heard it called loads of different things over the last 15 years I've been doing this. Low code and hard code's newish, maybe, last 3 years. Back in the day, it used to be functional consultancy, technical consultancy, and then people like me went through various different names. So I was a hybrid consultant at one point, which sounds weird. I was a techno-functional consultant, which made me feel like I was in Terminator. And then eventually everyone settled on solution architect, and that seems to have settled in. But it means the way you blend what's going on with the technical world, how do you actually make it work for people, and then how does that actually impact how we deliver technology. And so low code now is something that's massively come on the scene. People used to talk about it a bit, but it often meant map out a database without writing code, or SQL scripts or something. Nowadays, you can do tons without writing code. Big chunks of my job now, I've written hundreds of bits of code, you don't need to do any more. And what it really means is, in some levels, it can be really basic, like, oh, cool, I can build this in a workflow package instead of writing code. For somebody like me, I don't care whether I'm doing it in workflow or I'm writing code, it's the same thing. It's two different ways to tackle the same problem. But culturally, what it really means is technology people have to do what they've always said they've been doing, but often didn't, which is go in there and go, I'm not just going to give you some product that I've come up with or some system. I'm going to actually work with you guys to help you guys understand this technology so you can deliver that technology. The whole point is to build a platform that other people can do things with. And that's a bit of a cultural shift in how people liaise with technology. I always used to refer to it as like in films where somebody rocks up and goes, oh, I'll do that again in English. I'm like, no, all of it should be in English now. It should be accessible to everybody. And really what you're seeing is the democratization of technology, where technology is no longer gatekeeped by the IT department or by people like that. It's getting into everybody. Obviously, it kind of has gone into everybody in some shape or form. But then you're looking at things where you've got platforms and things delivered by the cloud that are massively accessible in your pocket. You know, if someone came to me like 10 years ago and said, I want a machine learning algorithm to go and study all my data and make predictions about the future, it'd be like, brilliant, 40 grand project, so we're going to go build all this code. Nowadays, you can plug something in the cloud and it'll probably do that for you. And a lot of the time, technology people are connecting you with technology that already exists and then showing you how to do things with it. They're not gatekeepers anymore, they're basically facilitators. And really, then you've got hard code. Some people call it pro code. Some people call it, I think there's other names for it, expert code. But really, so I picked hard code because it seems to work well with low code. But really, that's obviously writing hardcore lines of code. Obviously, that still exists. But essentially, what people like myself do when we're doing that now, we're not really building specific products anymore. It's very rare that I will get a client that I'm writing code just for them. It's mostly we're building platforms. And when we're building platforms that can then go and help different businesses solve problems. And typically any code that we write nowadays will apply to lots of different people. And that's your fundamental shift with the cloud. That's happened for years now. But obviously Microsoft put all sorts of products in the cloud. They then pushed it out to everybody, obviously. It massively allows them to, basically get their product into more bums on seats. They're not writing stuff for you. They're writing stuff for loads of people. And then you've got like how that technology then gets delivered. But there's sort of different ways of that. Obviously, a lot of people, when you sort of meet people like myself, people in the Microsoft Cloud, or all the various other cloud products, they'll talk endlessly about low code. It's brilliant because they can employ people who do low code. They don't have to do all this developers anymore, lock them in cupboards and worry about error handling. But there is a fundamental distinction I've found in the market is that low code has a lot of similar problems of pro code. You do need good engineering principles. You can still generate the dreaded thing that's basically in my industry, technical debt, by doing lots of low code. It's a crucial point, really. Use hard code where it's applicable, use low code where it's applicable, use no-code systems where they're applicable. And your technology footprint should look like a mixture of those three things. If someone comes in and just goes, oh, we just do everything low code, we have no hard code whatsoever, might be right, but you need to assess that that's the right mix for that job and not just what a technology company wants to do. Similar, if they've got an army of developers and 20 people hard coding it up constantly, that's probably not the right option either. And it's looking at the right tool for the right job at the right time. And that's a big thing in sort of my industry because quite a lot of people using Dynamics and the Microsoft Cloud and saying everything's low code, there's going to be nothing anymore, we're going to write everything in workflow and Power Automate, and that's that. Yeah, to a point, but often it's not necessarily the right thing to do. And then she said, yeah, the right mix, and this is what I sort of tried to snap this into a snappy buzzword. Low code uses existing platforms to build products in your firm, ideally for you guys to build products in your firm, rather than going out to tender and going, I've got all these requirements, come solve all my problems for me and build my product that I'm going to push out to my customers. No, you want to sort of buy a platform that then lets you guys build those products and get them out to your customers because you'll know your product's better than some IT company. That might not always be possible. You might need to actually go, oh no, there's technical stuff here that I can't do or the platform can't do. I need to get hardcore code in there. But hardcore code and external people is obviously going to create a gap between what you're doing and your end customer because no technology firm, no hard code will understand your customer where you guys will. And that, without labouring the point too much, is where a lot of these low-code platforms come from. It allows you to align your business, your way of doing matter management, case management, with how you need to do that, rather than it being technology sort of driving what you can possibly offer to your customers. And that tends to be the difference. Low code delivers what you guys need to do. Hard code builds platforms that then you can use to go and do what you need to do with. And really in my sort of part of the world, we've kind of done both. I know this really well. because predominantly, if I look at sort of a couple of examples that we do, we obviously use lots of the Microsoft Cloud. That's a brilliant platform. There's low code, there's no code, there's hard code. But right in the middle there's a product called DocDrive that we've built. That's a firmly hard code product. We've spent years working with the SharePoint APIs in Microsoft Cloud, so you don't have to. So we know all about all the challenges of that, but then we've built a platform. I've got loads of customers who use my platform to go and do what they need to do. So we've kind of, and it's quite rare for a small techie company to do that because it's quite a big undertaking, even when the scope of our product is quite small. But that's where we've delivered a full-on technical product. We built a platform and shipped it to people alongside what we do, services of taking other people's platforms, Microsoft's, Office, Dynamics and SharePoint, and then doing the services on top of that to help with the low code and the no code side of things. And really the way that builds up, obviously I've used a few examples here. This is sort of maybe the common sort of projects that we get involved in. But then really what you look at is then going, right, what's my architecture in the cloud? How do I build what it is I need to build? Well, I might do a variety of these different bits to suit my business. What works for what we need to do? You probably start off with over here, what I call almost a no-code side of things, where you can go, right, what's my database look like? How can I build this? You don't need technical people for that anymore. If you want to model a database, obviously, most people can do that now without employing techies because it's quite user-friendly. Obviously, that's been around for a little while. What then do I couple it with things that might need a little bit of technical input to get us started? I might ship these platforms in there. I get a portals platform. I get a DocDrive, which is sort of document management platform, really. Get those in there, and then I can start off with the techies doing that, but it can slowly slide into how I do the world, so I don't need the techies anymore. I understand the platforms that we've bought in-house. I can put them to use, and I can do the things I need to do with them. And then you've got things over here where you might go, well, actually, there's some more hardcore stuff I want to do. I want to go and stick to a lot of APIs in Azure. I want to go and set up some machine learning units in my business. I'm going to need some software developers for that. It's going to be pretty hardcore stuff. Get those in there, and then that gives platforms within your business that you can then work out how you do with them. And the magic bit is that top bit up there, automation, of like how you connect the hardcore bits you've developed with then your sort of low-code ways of using them. How we then get that and use those to deliver the product we want to deliver. And that's a sort of common project for me. It's sort of like usually, there might not be that sort of element up there, but it's often you've got some elements you want to put in Azure, connect those into your platform using a Microsoft technology called Power Automate, which is a sort of low-code engine. So you can connect that hardcore stuff in a nice low-code fashion. Have that feed into your portals, your internal apps, possibly your document management system, and then usually that'll connect up with Office 365 for email and your sort of standard calendaring, documents, that kind of thing. And really what that allows to give you is you sort of map out how that's actually going to be used in our world. You built your platforms, you built your data there, so you've got the sort of underlying building blocks of what we're tracking and how we're managing that. You've then got the interesting bit in the middle, which is your product that you then ship out to different people. That could be your internal sort of case management teams, legal teams are going, here's this brilliant case management system we've got and it's backed up with a bit of machine learning or connections to other APIs. But really then you'd go, well, we've got portals, we've got external apps that we can then release to our customers so they can integrate into how we do things, builds customer loyalty and obviously gives them a product, not just a service, but a product and a service of how they're engaging with us as a firm. And then you may have a series of APIs or Power BI, that kind of thing, that will then your data analytics team will pick up with, run with, and then feed basically intelligence about the business, either internally back to our internal teams or out to our clients. And obviously the holy grail there is you build various bits of client intelligence and feed that back to the client and go, look, it's brilliant you're working for this is your added value, because here's all the client intelligence about how you do business with us, or maybe how you do business in the wider marketplace. And then you're giving them a series of technical products, as well as all the normal sort of legal services we might provide to them. And that sort of combo really is where my sort of take on the sort of market really is where a lot of business is happening. It's like, right, what services do we provide backed up with what technological products underpin those? Then for my end, obviously really what sort of, I kind of like presenting some of the theory, but I like to look at how that's actually been applied in the real world, how people have put these systems to use. For us, we're deep in the pandemic. We were quite lucky. A renewable energy company got in touch with us to sort of go, oh, well, we've got this massive problem, we've got this huge document management system that's gone completely out of control, it's no longer fit for purpose. We want to do some sort of digitization exercise and we want to base that around the Microsoft cloud. So they basically sort of in the process, and it's years it will take to map the whole business out, but want to map everything out, get away from spreadsheets, get away from a tool called Project Place, and migrate everything towards the Microsoft cloud using Azure, Power Apps and Dynamics, and SharePoint. And obviously they found us. Obviously there's big elements of that project, but they found us because we're pretty much the experts when it comes to linking Power Apps and SharePoint together. And really their big challenge was if you're looking at the contracting side of a renewable wind farm effectively, there is oodles of information that feeds into that. There's literally thousands of documents and obviously huge amounts of data coming from those sort of wind farms into something that then they can go and use that to manage energy pricing. And obviously all around incoming and outbound energy, there's huge contractual agreements on that. And so they found us and really, they said, yeah, that was the challenge. There's fragmented data everywhere. How do we sort that out? How do we give them a proper SharePoint-based document management system? And the big one for them is that potentially they're based across 16 different countries. Actually based on more than that, but I think we just did 16. 16 different countries, and they're trying to get all of those countries doing the same sort of thing. Everybody using SharePoint, everybody feeding data back and forth, rather than having 16 countries worth of different processes all knocking around. And that's where they needed a mixture of all these different concepts to try and manage that. And so really what we'd take a look at this in the real world, how this actually looks. So this is Microsoft's Power Apps. I always think of Power Apps. If you ever hear of Microsoft use the word Power Apps, to me, because somebody who's been with it a long time, it's kind of Dynamics CRM, because Dynamics CRM has sort of become Power Apps in a weird way. So the two terms are a bit interchangeable, but that's whispering on about Microsoft licensing, which I'm sure nobody wants to get into too much. Yeah, somebody knows. But what that allows us to do is effectively model a whole load of data, and this is very much your no-code setup. What does a contract look like for a wind farm? Obviously, what we would come in and do, I don't know what a contract looks for a wind farm. There's lots of things on here I'm not quite sure of. But we would then come in and work with, in this case, Inca, whoever it might be, to model what that contract looks like. And then let them define how that contract flows, what counterparties are involved, what steps need to be done in that, and then what workflow and business rules are ticking along behind the scenes. And that's where, again, that sort of that no-code, sort of low-code platform, we can set all that up and then obviously let them be the driver of what their contracts look like and how that data is modelled. And peeking a little bit behind the scenes, and again, this is just really looking at that kind of democratisation of IT these days. There's a lot of systems out there that look similar to this, but really it's giving people, getting over that barrier to entry of technology of going, look, you can go model your own data from. You know, it's not some sort of hardcore technical job. You don't need reams of technical people and test scripts and that kind of thing. You just need a good focus on it, but you do just need a good engineering head to make sure that people don't create 10 fields for the same thing, or field 1, field 2, field 3. You do need good principles, and that's where the hard code concepts kind of filter through. But really, if you build those good principles, you can then build that kind of innovation internally, rather than having to get it from external.
Is that sort of admin level, though, presumably?
Oh, yeah. But really, it's a term that sort of Microsoft branded around, so it's difficult to get that culture in a business, but it's citizen developers. It's going, look, we can train you up and teach you those principles. We can teach you how to do it, because it's very, very simple. But then, you know, citizen developers inside a firm can take that forward. And then,
that drives your insights bringing data fields.
Yeah, it's the one. So you can sort of model that data and sort of see how that's done. And, you know, data obviously is inherently a bit techie, but the closer that is to the business, the quicker then a sort of can-do culture in a business can be there. So not constantly waiting for some external resource to, you know, help them do basic data modeling tasks. And that's where, I'm sure it'll have a different term in a few years, but that's where citizen developer has sort of come into the industry as a bit of a buzzword to say, look, anybody can do this. You don't need to be constantly going to external consultants. And then that then builds all of this, and sort of like how this is all modelled up. And obviously you can, obviously as you can see with the guys here, they've done quite a lot of areas here. You can have contract amendments. You can then track the sort of money flowing and outflowing for a contract. But really where I kick into it a little bit is that like me and my company come along is you've got SharePoint in one place, which is great for document management, but it's completely disconnected to the Power Apps and Dynamics view of the world for reasons that only Microsoft understand, and maybe I do now. I've used the SharePoint API. But then where we came into it is they go, well, we want thousands of documents per asset and potentially dozens of documents for a contract. We want to push those out via DocuSign. We want to have metadata tracking those documents. How can we do all of that? And that's where people like myself kick in, where you've got pockets of expert, like genuine experts in the industry who go, I've done all the SharePoint metadata, I've done all the DocuSign, and we have a product that we built to help do that. And that's where you find like technical specialists who can help you in that particular area that you want to do. And as I said, from an IT procurement view of the world, you can buy a lot of this technology from Microsoft, you can buy people to help you train and manage that, and obviously there's loads of Dynamics and Power Apps specialists in the world. But then when you get into specific requirements, it's finding the tech companies that do that area of expertise. And never trust any tech company that claims to be good at everything, because it's nonsense. Because, that's how I've been doing the Microsoft Cloud for about 20 years, but there's still big chunks that I don't know. So I'll never quite trust the big channel partners who pretend they've got a guy for everything. But then you don't really need that anymore. That's the old view of buying IT. Use small technical companies or medium-sized technical companies, get the specialists in that you need, and then get them to work together, because it's much easier for companies that collaborate via the cloud. So obviously what the guys wanted to do is that you get areas like this, where you've got a number of different bits of metadata within a document for a contract, where they go, all right, cool, that's an energy generation system document, pick a topic, and then obviously then run searches, filters by that metadata. Simple stuff really for a document management system, but just having that directly integrated into Power Apps here and having all those links joined up together. And really for themselves, so really what you get there is you've got like this sort of low-code bit from Microsoft, which is the Power Platform. You've then got DocDrive from ourselves, which is our sort of DMS system, which to us is hard code, but to them is low code, because they've got a huge amount of configuration and how they can use that. The exact mirror of what we were seeing earlier, but the sort of DocDrive equivalent, as it were. I jump into our DocDrive app, and I've got all the different things that they want to track documents about, and they can set this up. They use our product to set it up. And I've got a whole range of customers, some who know this inside out, some people who barely go near it and ring us every time they want to change it. But you've got that whole low-code setup that other people can take forward. And that's where, from my side, hard code builds platforms, builds this. Then you connect the platforms to people and get them to do what they need to do with it. And then just looking at this in a practical application, you've got various different documents here. Obviously, if these guys are managing loads of contracts, they've got a mixture of different people who are buying that energy, different people who are sort of selling that energy, and they've obviously got loads of suppliers doing all sorts of maintenance work on these wind farms. So the key point, much like everyone else in the world really, is then going, right, I've got this particular document, I need to push it out to DocuSign, get people signed out. Now DocuSign's a great product, I use it internally, and it's dead easy. These guys need to send out dozens of DocuSigns a day, probably potentially hundreds, so they integrated that directly into how they do things. They don't want to be jumping from DocuSign back into their CRM system effectively and dragging and dropping things around. They just want it all captured in. And that's where, again, you go, oh, there's going to be a bit of hard code joining the dots there, because when you build your platform that basically connects this with DocuSign. So for these guys, if they want to do a bit of quick DocuSign, they just jump into their activities area, much like traditional CRM, pop in a DocuSign, give it an envelope subject. And then see who I want that to go to, so I'm afraid I'm victimising myself. And obviously the list of recipients that they're doing is plugged into their CRM system to just go, all right, Paul McQuillan, we know who that guy is. We've already got his email address in there. Save that in, and then it'll give me a list of documents in SharePoint that I might want to go and fire out via DocuSign. And then I can go, all right, I want that particular document, push that out to DocuSign, Paul McQuillan will get the email, sign it, and then the signed copy will then jump back into SharePoint. So the whole thing is basically encapsulated in Power Apps. Even to the point where, so I've got signature required there, so I've got the document that I want, so I've tagged that a little bit earlier. Jump in there, tag that, click next, and then that's going off to the DocuSign API now, firing that over, saying send that out to Paul McQuillan. Paul McQuillan's going to get an email address saying, right, please go and sign this document, and then when I sign it, it's going to pop into SharePoint and go, right, that's your signed DocuSign document. Everything is then, in my sort of techie world, stored within your security envelope. There's no downloads, there's no things just jumping at people's emails that's somewhere out there. It's all stored in there, And then that's a way that Inca can get contracts out to people at speed and go, right, that's what we want to do. And inevitably, because of that, I can keep an eye on that, just as it's going back and forth with the APIs, by jumping into my DocuSign area here. Oh, I can see all the previous envelopes that we sent out. You can see a few little tests that have gone out the door. And then once that one's finished whirring through, oh, there we go, it's then going to pop in my pending envelopes, because that's the list of DocuSigns I've got out in the wild that I need to chase, well, they need to chase people to sign off on. Or we use DocuSign's little email system that emails you every day until you've signed it. And really how all of that's done is, as I said, we've built, obviously our DMS app, we've built all the stuff that does the hard work with SharePoint and DocuSign. We've got all the scars to prove it, because they're both quite curious APIs. But we then connect that with a low-code platform that if people then say, well, that's great, you built us this wonderful way we work DocuSign, thanks you big bunch of techies, that's not the real way we want to use it. We want to still do the same things, we want to do it in a different way. Well, that's where we'd sort of work with Inca in this case, or work with them, I suppose, and then go, how do you want to do it? We can model that whole process in a low-code atmosphere where we go, right, that's where it starts, then we're doing different things within your CRM, your Power Apps, and then eventually get these wonderful little green icons here, which is where the bits of the API that we've built, and then we put in Power Automate and goes, look, you don't need to worry what our API does and all the mysterious semicolons we have to put in it. You can just use it through Power Automate, and away you go. And that essentially, obviously a lot of people have been talking about service architecture for years, saying, oh, you have loads of APIs, you can put them to use, you build your sort of toolkit of your business. It's great, but Power Automate allows you to really do that, but dragging and drop your blocks around effectively. Let's use the Betty blocks, guys. It's a similar world. You can drag those blocks around. You've got a little bit there where you're going, right, I'm going to start off in Dynamics, Power Apps. I'm then going to do a bit of things in Flow, do a few loops and variables, standard development stuff. But then I'm just going to go, right, I want you to use that API and I want you to do this. And then you call in quite a lot of complicated API at a touch of a button. And ultimately, that's then something that the business can go away and build these, rather than, again, having to go back to developers all the time. Because you can see with this setup, now I look at it, we built this a couple of years ago. DocuSign, creating an activity for each DocuSign envelope, is it the right way of doing it? Probably, but I would say that, because I'm more techie, I want to get all the different fields, all the different possibilities in there. But the business might go, no, we just need to do this really quickly. I just want to click a tick box, and off it goes. And then that allows them to do that effectively. There's a very similar, and really then you've got is that sort of model almost of going, right, I want to use DocuSign, I want to use DocDrive and SharePoint for document management, and I want to use that alongside Dynamics CRM. And really for Inca and people like that, the other element they would then go is they would look at that and go, well, it's great that we've got all these contracts and whatnot, but a bit of mine is when I've got this contract for selling, buying energy, maintenance, I'm going to have all those purchase orders off the back of that. Those purchase orders are going to drag suppliers in how this contract gets managed, how this contract gets delivered. I want them to engage me via a portal. I want them to be able to access bits of our information. I want them to access loads of documentation. I want stuff going on online, not just this team's going crazy. Not just going on inside our system. I want to push that out to other people. And really, in a sort of building portals, and I've built portals the old-fashioned way, and it takes a lot of time and effort. But nowadays, you can plop that sort of platform into the way you do CRM, drag a portal management app in, and you've got the ability to define how your portal's going to work in a sort of low-code kind of way. Put that portal in place, say what information is going to get pushed out to the client or the supplier, what intelligence we're going to provide to them, and how we're going to provide it to them. And really, I won't labour the point too much, but really looking at that, you've got the kind of almost similar to Wix and that kind of thing where you start going, that's my portal, these are the different web pages we're going to do in that portal, this is what content they're going to do. And what that effectively allows people to do when they're jumping into this is just access a portal that allows them to log in. And often nowadays we can use people's Office 365 credentials to log in, so they don't have to have another account. You don't have to store their passwords or any of the old stuff we used to have to do. Plug it into the Microsoft ecosystem. They can log in via the password, multi-factor authentication that they're used to. I don't really want to know about any of their login details. They can just do it for their Office 365 account. So here I'm logged into sort of Inca's sandbox system, I'm just logged in as my CRMCS email account. I don't have to worry about having a separate password. And then enable them to jump in, and in this case, look at the different purchase orders connected to the contract that they're involved with. They're involved with that contract. They've got a variety of purchase orders. They can jump into any one of these. See different actions that they might want to engage with that contract or purchase order. Do you want to confirm it? Do you want to query it? Is there any updates from your side? And then the crucial bit from my end, because I love a bit of document management, is they can then go and see all the contracts, the documents connected with that contract, and obviously upload new information as we need to request documents from them. So you've got somewhere you can share information with your client, with your supplier. And what you can see in places like this is we have things that are directly about this contract or this purchase order. So they're things about this. But then you can have a whole lot of reference documentation for these guys. They work in lots of different assets all over those 16 countries. So each asset has like reference documentation. How do you work within this country? What's the ethical sort of minimum standard in this country? What's your company instruction information? So there's a series of health and safety information that it's very much asset specific or country specific, and then we can rig up the portal to produce that documentation for them. And again, that documentation isn't stored in millions of different places, it's just stored against that country, and then it's available to your suppliers and your clients when they're accessing the portal. You're giving them a kind of technological relationship with your company as much as a sort of human relationship. And really what that builds up to this particular example is if I jump back up here and jump into assets, you've got 50 or 60 major assets spread across those 16 countries, thousands of documents in each one. And that solves a very particular business problem for them. If you're now navigating thousands of documents of an asset across possibly 100 contracts, they can then rattle through that documentation, find what they're looking for, and they've got a way of managing those flows of information. And for these guys, what they do is they integrate all of this with SQL as well, because obviously these assets go across dozens of their different systems. So they've got a huge asset register system, which then feeds into here. This then does the contract management, the purchase order management, and the document management for what they do. So they're joining the dots between what they use the Microsoft Cloud for, what they use SQL in the cloud for, and then how that feeds out to other systems. So they're building that kind of step-by-step innovation roadmap. And for them, from later on this year, the next steps is to look at how they construction, build whole new wind farms, sales and tendering, and add more business application to what we do with them Power Apps, SharePoint, and now DMS. So just looking at that, that's obviously on certain sides are on later, but that's sort of how we did it, what bits of technology we used there. And then what I'll do is I'll skip over this one. I've got another example. If anyone wants to come and chat with us afterwards, another example of how we do the same, but with fund intelligence mapping. We work with another client to build fund intelligence and then share that out for a whole network of IFAs. It's a really interesting project. It's worth having a chat with us. But I'll skip over that one because I'm rambled too much about renewable energy. But really, sort of big takeaways from that is, as I said, you get in the mix, right? If you look at what we're just sort of looking at there, there's a huge amount of low code going on. There's a huge amount of joining the dots. But you've got that hub of hard code, wherever you get it, where you get the right platforms to build that into a workable solution, and then where do you get that hard code, where do you get those developers in with a traditional development lifecycle, where do you have that middle ground where technology specialists can come train your firm how to utilize that technology. It might start off fully coming from external, but then slowly transition to internal. And then where do you get no-code tools that really you want to bring into your firm and put them to use and have your way of doing business, and then your way of going, right, do we have polls, do we have this, do we have that? And mapping out sort of how you deliver your products to your customers. And really, that then gives you the products. You look at sort of Inca as an example there. Their product is that portal. Their product is obviously the contract management that they're shipping out to their clients and suppliers. And then ultimately, that product will be energy reports shipped via the portal, where you can see the inflow and outflow of energy and the price of energy that comes from a renewable wind farm, and then the contracts that then define how people buy that energy. So their legal team is then mapped up with their product team. And really, with almost everyone, it used to be a buzzword a few years ago. It's always like innovation. I used to do loads of conferences. Innovation became a bit like machine learning and ChatGPT for me, overused buzzword. But nowadays, the companies that innovate will inevitably rise to the top. They're inevitably going to be the companies that do well, because there's so much easy innovation out there. and technology out there that can be added into what we can do. And really, if I was going to give people like procurement advice of how to do all of this, you look at that sort of triangle. You've got business domain knowledge, which is the firm, the client, they know everything better than anyone else. You've then got your technology providers, so people like me who can get started on that journey and then connect you, well, technology provider in the top right, sorry, industry expert, sorry, myself, sort of how to do that. And then you've got where do you get the technology, which will probably be from big tech these days because they do the best technology. Our doc drive is brilliant, but we're not going to go and compete with Microsoft, we're not going to build SharePoint or anything. So Microsoft are going to get, you know, Microsoft, Amazon, Salesforce, whoever it might be, you're going to get your technology from big tech, but you're going to need a way of getting that and then rolling that out in a manageable way, but then making sure that that tech provider empowers you guys and isn't just a gatekeeper and just saying, oh yeah, you need to come back to us to do everything. And then I think that's about my lot. Obviously, you can tell it's an area I know quite a lot about. I do my sort of strange pointy arms everywhere because it's obviously something I'm immensely passionate about. I've done it for years. I run a company that basically is set up to do this. So obviously, if there's any questions or anything I can help with, feel free to fire them past me.